Hey, I'm John Cannell, and today on Preppy Kitchen we're making the lightest, fluffiest angel food cake. So let's get started. First off, set your oven to 350 so it's nice and hot. Your rack should be in the bottom third, and grab 12 eggs and make sure they're room temperature. Now, in the bowl of your food processor, we're gonna add 1 3/4 cups or 350 grams of granulated sugar. If you do not have a food processor, you can still make this cake, but instead of granulated sugar, you will use super fine sugar and sift everything out really well. This is gonna get processed now. We're gonna whiz it up until it is super fine, almost like powdered sugar. And whiz it up. You'll wanna process this for about a minute. This is important because you want the sugar to dissolve completely in the egg whites for the most fluffy, amazing angel food cake. If you don't, it's just not gonna be able to rise as much. Right now we're gonna divide our sugar. Grab 1 cup of this super fine sugar. You can see it's so much more powdery now. This is reserved now. I'm not gonna use a scale because granulated sugar and superfine sugar and powdered sugar all have different gram weights, so just grab a cup, set that aside. It's time to add our cake flour and salt in, so back to the scale we go. For this cake, you'll want 1 cup or 112 grams of cake flour. Cake flour is different from all-purpose because it's been milled much finer and it has a lower protein content. Higher protein content are good if you're making breads or even like a chewy chocolate chip cookie, but for the lightest, fluffiest cake, you want cake flour. If you really want to make this cake but you don't have cake flour, you can use all-purpose flour. Measure out 1 cup using a scale or by sprinkling the flour in, level it off, and then remove 3 tablespoons of the flour and replace that with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. For some contrast in this lovely cake, we're gonna add half a teaspoon of salt as well. And now we're gonna whiz this up again. So if you're doing this without a food processor, super fine sugar, and you're gonna sift this out maybe 2 or 3 times. We're gonna pulse this up 10 times now. So 1, 2, 3, and 10. I'm done whizzing up. This has gotten nicely combined. So we can say goodbye to our food processor and hello to a sieve. Grab a fine meshed sieve and pop that over a medium or large bowl, and we're gonna sift in this reserved cup of sugar. This is done mostly just to catch any large grains of sugar that could mess things up. Sift, sift, sift. What's coming out is so nice and fine. One of the reasons we use a food processor instead of just saying, hey, grab some superfine sugar, is that not all superfine sugars are the same. Some are really for mixing into your coffee as opposed to baking with. And it can be quite problematic when you're making anything like meringue based, including this cake. So this is your insurance policy. Even though I processed this for more than a minute, I still have about a tablespoon of sugar that is not superfine. Grab the back of a spoon and just press it through the sieve. Doing this will make the sugar a little bit smaller. You're kind of like sanding the sugar basically. So I have about half a teaspoon of sugar that's left. That's fine. Set that aside. Now we're gonna grab a large bowl, grab that same sieve, and we're gonna sift in our mixture of sugar and flour. If you're wondering, this cake comes from St. Louis, Missouri, and it was developed in the late 1800s. And I'm very grateful for it as it is one of my all-time favorite cakes, especially in the summer. I love serving this when we're having an al fresco lunch, and it's like the perfect dessert for a warm day because it's so light, so fluffy, you can eat a ton of it, and it goes really well with whipped cream and berries. So same thing here, I have about a tablespoon of sugar that's too large, so we're gonna rake it through the sieve so it's nice and small. Our dry ingredients are done with prep, so we're gonna set this aside, and now you can grab a big bowl and a hand mixer, or if you wanna do less work, grab your stand mixer, and we're gonna deal with our eggs. My recipe calls for 10 to 12 large eggs, and this is really important to talk about. So these are both large eggs, but to me, they are totally different sizes and have different amounts of egg white in them. So if you're just gonna say, okay, 10 large eggs, or 11 or 12, you can make this recipe and your cake would be a little bit flatter or much larger depending on the random eggs that you got. So both large, totally different sizes. The solution is to measure out exactly how much egg whites you're having with a scale and or a measuring cup. We want to have 1.5 cups or 355 grams of egg whites, and you're going to crack your egg whites into a separate bowl so that there is no chance of having a broken egg yolk polluting the whole batch. That would be sad. And the first yolk broke. Aren't I glad I'm cracking this into a separate bowl? Basically, you should have like a little other third bowl for like tomorrow's breakfast. That's anything that breaks like this. Ooh, set that aside. Gonna rinse this out. Egg white in one, yolk in the other. And once you're sure it's clear, that goes into your measuring cup. Continue on until you have 1.5 cups or 355 grams. And if you're wondering, you want to use room temperature eggs because they just mix better than the cold eggs. These egg yolks are not trash. They are delicious, golden, and perfect for custards like a creme pâtissière. You could make a flan with them, or a lemon curd to serve with your angel food cake. You could make a raspberry curd as well. If you want to make this cake, by the way, it's a delicious thing to make the day before. Just wrap it in plastic and it'll be fine at room temperature. It doesn't fare well for longer than that. It's really best fresh. By the way, if you like my videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. There's 2 new recipes every single week and shorts too. That's 1.5 cups exactly, and it's 360 grams. I will take the extra few grams, better to have more than less. This was 11 eggs, so 10 to 12 is really right. It can fall either way. Really good to measure it out. You don't have to use a scale. You could use a measuring cup. Now we're gonna set our scale aside. It's done for the day. And it's time to use our stand mixer. Now, in the bowl of your stand mixer, fitted with a whisk attachment or a large bowl if you're using a hand mixer, we're gonna add our egg whites in. And for best practices, make sure that bowl is clean. Wipe it down with a little bit of lemon juice and vinegar. Just make sure there's nothing butter creamy hanging out in here because these egg whites do not like that. To help stabilize the eggs, we're gonna add an acid in the form of cream of tartar. This is derived from the winemaking process. 1.5 teaspoons. If you don't have cream of tartar, you could use 1.5 teaspoons of white vinegar or lemon juice. They'll both work. We're gonna mix this on low until the eggs become frothy. Give this about a minute. When you're making a meringue, it's best to start low and then increase as we go along. Once your egg whites are frothy, we're going to increase speed to medium and start adding our sugar in a tablespoon at a time. This is a low and slow situation, so just take your time, add it in, and what we're doing is giving the sugar a chance to dissolve. If I just dumped the sugar in, it would overwhelm the egg whites. This would be kind of grainy if you felt it, and they just would not have that wonderful marshmallowy characteristic of really fluffed up egg whites. Right now we're technically making a French meringue, and a lot of people think, well, a lot of bakers think that a Swiss or Italian meringue is gonna be like spectacularly like thick and luscious and just different from a French meringue. But you can get really good results if you follow the right steps, including adding the sugar in slowly. Just sprinkle it in and give it a chance to dissolve. And you've probably noticed this cake is not like a simple stir together batter where we're using baking powder or baking soda. It's gonna be like no other cake that you could make, because this cake, if you've noticed, doesn't have any other reactants like a baking powder or baking soda. It's just the fluffed up egg whites that will expand when they're heated up. And then what we're gonna do is turn our pan upside down to let gravity continue the work and help the cake be nice and tall. Once that last tablespoon of sugar is added, we're gonna let this mix up for about 5 minutes or until you have soft, glossy peaks forming. I'm not quite there yet, but as this mixes on medium, you'll notice that this is rising up in the bowl. The eggs are getting so much volume from the air getting pumped in. The reason we're doing a soft peak as opposed to a stiff peak is it'll give us a nicer rise in the oven. If we beat all the air into them right now, they just tend to like not rise as much, and you want to have the fluffiest cake possible. That looks good. This is nice. Ah, it's perky but soft, so it's like a little mountain with a beautiful droop. Since this looks beautiful, it's time to add a little bit of flavor. That would be nice. 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla is all you need. Normally I never measure, but for this cake I will. Drizzle that in, and we're gonna mix it on low until just combined. Medium low. Okay, now we're gonna sift in the dry mixture in thirds. So add about 1/3 of the mixture in. These egg whites are beautiful, but delicate, so we don't want to overwhelm them with too many dry ingredients, which is why we're going in thirds. Use a spatula and fold this in. Think of this as scraping the side of the bowl down, cutting down the middle, and repeating. But your goal is to gently mix things together and not pop all those air bubbles. And fairly quickly, those dry ingredients will be mixed in. Once they are, repeat 2 more times with the extra thirds. Finish folding that in. So lovely. This still has beautiful soft peaks, although they are more floppy now. That's just how it works, don't worry about it. We're ready to transfer this into our tube pan, and of course you have a special angel food cake pan with a removable bottom and these little claw feet, because once it's done baking, it has to hang out upside down. Unlike almost any other cake, this should not be greased. If you greased your cake tin, your meringue-based batter wouldn't be able to climb up the sides. It would rise and then fall, and you'd be very sad. Now it's time to transfer our batter into our ungreased cake pan, angel food cake pan that is. Try and get every drop of this batter out because you want your cake to be as big as possible. As you go, you can kind of shimmy your spatula around because you don't want to have giant air bubbles in your batter. An optional step is to grab a skewer or a knife and just run it through the middle. And finally, grab a small offset spatula and just smooth the top out. Use a slightly damp towel and just wipe the edge because you don't want to have any burnt bits. Just delicious golden angel food cake. And just like that, our angel food cake is ready to go into the oven, 350, bottom third rack, and it's gonna be about 35 to 40 minutes, or until the top is beautifully risen and golden and a skewer inserted in the center comes out clean. I'll show you what to do right when it comes out of the oven because it's not like a normal cake. In you go. My cake's out of the oven, golden and puffed. However, it'll start sinking if it doesn't go upside down. That's why you have little feet right here. So I'm gonna have this on a wire rack inverted just for less countertop scraping. Allow your angel food cake to cool for at least an hour. That'll give it time to set and let the structure kind of hold up. It's very delicate right now. So what we wanna do is use gravity to stretch it out, and then as it cools, it'll set and become a little bit more firmer so that we can cut it and it'll retain its shape. Once your cake's cool, grab a cake stand or plate, and it's time to get this out. You want to remove the cake without cutting into it. Hug the edge of your pan and be conscientious of these little rivets. Those will mess you up. And then hopefully you'll be able to pop it right on out. Okay, and repeat that for the very bottom as well. Now invert this onto your plate, and just like that, you're ready to dust with powdered sugar. Give it a slice, cover in whipped cream and berries, and enjoy. It's like a vanilla cloud. It just dissolves on your tongue. It's impossibly light and fluffy, and honestly, I could eat this whole cake. I hope you get a chance to make this recipe, and if you like this video, hit subscribe and check out my vanilla playlist.